Coming back to helminthology, I started with Nemeth helminth and we discussed the classification on the basis of the habitats, and we have done all the organisms of the large intestines which are important like Enterobius vermicularis and Trichuris trichura. And today I'm going to move on to the parasites of the small intestines and we'll be starting with Ascaris lumbricoides. Now, the other name for Ascaris lumbricoides is roundworm because if you look at its structure, it is just like an earthworm, it is rounded in shape, and that is why we call it roundworm. This is the type of question that you will get in your exam. A 6-year-old villager fond of eating raw vegetables is brought to the emergency with severe abdominal pain and vomiting. The mother complains of passage of these earthworm-like parasites from his nose and in the vomitus. If you look at this picture, you can easily see or visualize these parasites coming out not only from the mouth but also from the nose. Plain X-ray of the abdomen, if you again look at this picture, reveals large collection of worms in the small intestines and intestinal obstruction was suspected. Surgical intervention revealed total obstruction of the upper part of the ileum. Please look at this picture and you will see that the intestines are totally blocked by these parasites. What is the most likely diagnosis? On investigation, stool examination showed 8 to 10 ovas per high power field, and the picture you can see of the ova, it has a single unsegmented ovum in the center and it is bile stained. And together with these ovas, a few of these reddish long rounded worms were seen. Blood examination revealed marked eosinophilia. Now, the questions related to that scenario and your learning objectives would be what is your diagnosis? At the end of the session, all of you should be able to diagnose a case of Ascaris in the laboratory. You should know the common name associated with this parasite. You should be familiar with the modes of transmission of this parasite, with the pathogenesis and life cycle of this parasites. Then at the same time you should know what complications are associated with the ascaris and how will you diagnose a case of ascariasis in the laboratory. Now this parasite is very important from your examination point of view. You get a full SCQ on this, plus you can get MCQs on Ascaris. You see the ova of Ascaris as part of your auspice and you're asked about it in your table viva. Coming to its epidemiology, this is one of the largest intestinal nematode. Now, this constitutes again your MCQ, the largest intestinal nematode and the largest nematodes. There are two terms which are used. The largest intestinal nematode is Ascaris lumbricoides, and the largest nematode as such is the one which resides in the subcutaneous tissue, and that is Dracunculus medinensis. Now, it's going to infest 25% of the total world population and mainly seen in the third world countries where there is poor sanitation. And it is present in large amounts, as you can see, this plate full of ascaris, and it has been taken out from the intestine of a child. Coming to its structure, they are cylindrical in shape. When they are freshly passed, they are just like this. They are reddish or pinkish brown in color. This parasite has a well-defined digestive system which starts from the mouth that has 3 teeth down to the anus, and this digestive system and the reproductive system floats within the body cavity of this parasite. The body cavity is full of an irritating fluid which is known as ascarase. This ascarase is protease in nature, so it is when it leaks out, it results to the allergic manifestations which are associated with this parasite. The next morphological structure is the egg. The eggs are very important. because they are very commonly seen in the stool, and you will see this in your exams as well. So the eggs can be fertilized eggs or they can be unfertilized eggs. Both fertilized and unfertilized eggs are bile stain. And if you look at this, sorry, if you look at this picture, you will see that the central part, this is the ovum. The ovum is rounded, and at the top and the bottom there is a clear concentric area which is known as which is specific for this ovum, and then the outer albuminous coat is thrown in rugosities. This outer coat has this waves which are known as rugosities, and this is the albuminous coat of this parasite. So the three things which you need to note in the egg or the fertilized egg of Ascaris is the number one, this outer albuminous coat which is thrown into rugosities, a large unsegmented ovum inside, and this clear concentric areas at each pole. And this is going to help us in identification of this egg in or the ova in the stool. This picture is showing you an unfertilized egg or the ovum, and in this case you hardly see the ovum. It is totally atrophied, and it's basically a protoplasmic mass with refractile granules, and you hardly see any albuminous coating around this ovum, but this is considered as the heaviest of all helminth eggs. This picture is showing you the both the fertilized and the unfertilized egg, and here you can easily differentiate between what I have just told you. If you look at this well-defined ovum, you don't see any ova over here, and then this ovum over here, there are clear spaces at the poles which are not seen here. So this unfertilized egg is basically a protoplasmic mass with refractile granules. The ovum is atrophied and there is no hardly any albuminous coat around it. So the MCQ related to this part is, which of the following differentiates fertilized eggs from unfertilized eggs? So look at all the options and find out the answer for yourself. Regarding the modes of transmission, it is by ingestion of food or water contaminated with the eggs of Ascaris. That is the main mode of transmission. However, if you look at this picture, there are children playing, sitting on the soil and playing, and this soil is contaminated with human excreta, which is used as fertilizers in the fields. So this is the second mode of transmission of this parasite. Life cycle is very important. Mostly you get a question on the life cycle of Ascaris in your exams. Talking about the adult worm, which is present in the small intestine, a gravid female is capable of producing as many as 200,000 eggs per day. And infection occurs by ingestion of contaminated egg which have a larval form in it with food and water. Unfertilized eggs may also be ingested, but they are not infective to man. The life cycle has been classified into different stages. The first stage is passage of these eggs in the stool, and second, in these eggs can be fertilized or they are unfertilized eggs. Second is development of the fertilized eggs in the soil. Now this development occurs in the moist shady soil, and results in formation of the infective form of the egg, and the infected eggs are ingested, resulting in liberation of larva. The next stage is migration through the lungs, and then the fifth stage is re-entry into the alimentary canal, where they are going to develop into sexually mature worms, and they start producing eggs again. So the first stage is passage of eggs. Now passage of eggs, these fertile eggs containing the typical unsegmented ovum are passed in the feces, and when they are freshly passed, they are not infective. The second stage is development in the soil. Now the eggs become infected in the moist shady soil, and within this egg, if you look at this picture, you will see a well-defined larva which is known as a rhabdidiform larvae. So this reptidiform larvae containing egg is the infective form of this parasite, and the humans who drink or water or take food contaminated with this egg are going to become a source of this parasite. Next is ingestion and liberation of larva. Infective eggs, when they are swallowed with the infected food, they go into the small intestine. In the small intestines, the larva, lava comes out. This lava is known as reptidiform larvae, and this reptidiform larvae is then going to pass through the intestinal mucosa. It's going to invade the intestinal mucosa, pass through it, go enter the portal circulation, is carried to the right side of the heart, from where it goes into the pulmonary circulation, enters the lung and settles over there. In the lung, it is going to grow further, and as it is growing in size, it is going to shed off its outer coat, which is known as the cuticle. And this cuticle, when it sheds off, when it is there in the lung, it is responsible for the allergic reactions associated with this parasite. So stage 3 was ingestion and liberation of the larvae in the small intestines, and stage 4 is migration through the lungs. Then comes to the fifth stage, where there is re-entry into the alimentary canal. Now this larva, when it attains a specific size, it is going to ascend the bronchial tree, passes over the larynx and the pharynx and are swallowed. Or when it shed off its cuticle, it produces an allergic reaction. The patient starts coughing, and with the cough, the larva comes up in the throat and is swallowed again. And once it is swallowed, it is going to go into the small intestines, where it develops into adult worm. It remains there in the lumen till such time that they become sexually mature. The gravid female then starts discharging the eggs in the feces. So this parasite is important because it is twice in the intestines, one in the form of eggs which have the reptidiform larvae, and the second is when the larva is migrating from the lungs and it is going back into the intestines. So this is a picture of life cycle. In your exams you get a question on draw and label in detail the life cycle of Ascaris. So if you get a question like that, this is what you're going to do. You will start from this infective eggs being swallowed with food or water, and from the mouth these eggs are going to reach the small intestines. In the small intestines, the eggs break down, the shell breaks down, and the larva hatches out, and this larva is now going to pass through the intestinal mucosa, goes into the portal circulation, is carried to the liver. From the liver, it is taken to the right side of the heart, and finally it goes and by this pulmonary circulation, it goes and settles down in the lungs. In the lungs, it is going to further develop, sheds off its cuticle, gets larger in size, and it irritates the lungs, and the patient starts coughing, and there is the larva moves up in the throat and it is swallowed again. Once it is swallowed again, now it's the larva which is entering the small intestine, and in the small intestine it develops into sexually matured adult worms, and the gravid female starts laying eggs, and these eggs are passed in the feces and go into the soil, and further development occurs over there. This is another picture showing you the life cycle. Very simple. The female laying eggs, the fertilized egg, single ovum in it. Further development occurs in the soil, and this results in formation of embryonated eggs, which have the reptidiform larvae in it. These eggs are ingested with food and water. In the small intestines, the larva comes out, it hatches out, enters the circulation, goes into the lungs, settles down in the lungs, grows over there, and then moves up the trachea, passes over the pharynx, and is swallowed again. And when it goes into the intestines, the larva develops into adult worm in the small intestines. The male fertilizes the female, and the female again starts laying eggs. This is another slide showing you development of different stages of Ascaris lumbricoides. This is the type of egg which is passed in the feces. It has a single ovum. You can easily make out the rugosities, albuminous rugosities, and the upper and the lower concentric poles. And further development occurs in the soil, and finally it results in formation of this reptidiform larvae. And the reptidiform, when this form of the egg is the embryotid egg is the one which is the infective stage. Once it is ingested, the larva hatches out in the intestines and the life cycle is repeated. All right. Coming to the clinical features, the symptoms depend on the worm burden, how many of these parasites are sitting in the intestines, and they are related to the adult worm, and some symptoms appear when the larva is migrating from one part to the other. Now, due to adult worm, the first important condition which is seen is hypovitaminosis A, and this is because this parasite is going to use up this vitamin A in the intestine, and this results in deficiency of vitamin A, leading to night blindness. And this is known as the spoliative action. The spoliative action is hypovitaminosis A. Secondly, it is going to produce anti-enzymes, and these anti-enzymes are going to destroy the intestinal enzymes, resulting in malnutrition or stunted growth. I told you just a few minutes back that it has escharon in its body cavity. So when this escharon leaks out, there are going to be toxic effects like typhoid-like fever. There could be urticarial rash. There could be conjunctivitis, etc. Then very important are the many mechanical effects which are associated with this pathogen. I've shown you the slide where the whole intestine like this, which was completely filled up with this Ascaris, and when it fills up, it's going to obstruct the intestinal mucosa, and this results in the obstruction and the signs and symptoms with which the patient comes up. Then there could be intestinal perforation. You can see this parasite coming out, this roundworm coming out of the intestine. Ectopic ascariasis is also very important. This is also known as the wandering worm. Ectopic means that they are present at abnormal position, not in the small intestine. They can be seen at other positions which are abnormal. For example, they can go and obstruct the biliary tract, and they can obstruct and they resulting in obstructive jaundice, or they can obstruct the pancreatic ducts, leading to chronic pancreatitis. They can go in and settle down in the appendix, causing acute appendicitis, and when they go in the peritoneum, there could be peritonitis. So another name for Ascaris is the wandering worm. Now, the conditions associated with larva are important. You get an MCQ on Loeffler's syndrome. Loeffler's syndrome or pneumonia is associated with the larval form of Ascaris. While it is moving from the lungs or while it is growing in the lungs, it is going to produce cough, dyspnea, hemoptysis, fever. All the signs and symptoms of pneumonia would be seen. And then as it is shedding off its cuticle, it is going to produce allergic reaction, which could be in the form of asthmatic attacks, or there could be a urticarial rash, or there may be a pulmonary infiltration with this parasite. Eosinophilia, blood is going to show marked increase in the number of eosinophils, which can be as many as 20% of the total TLC. Coming to its complication, the first is intestinal obstruction, as you can see over here, completely filling the intestinal lumen and causing obstruction. Second is perforation. The worm can pass through the intestinal mucosa, through the walls of the intestine, and can enter the peritoneum, leading to peritonitis, as you can see here. As I said, it's an ectopic worm, so it can, when it goes and settle down, you can see this picture here. You can see easily make out the parasite sitting. This is a parasite sitting in the gallbladder, so it is going to cause obstruction. Intrahepatic or extrahepatic bile ducts may be obstructed, leading to jaundice. And here you can see a highly inflamed appendix, and this parasite is coming out, portion of it is coming out of the appendix, so it is causing appendicitis. It can go and settle down in the pancreatic duct, leading to chronic or acute pancreatitis. There may be pneumonitis, or there may be bronchitis and asthmas. Lab diagnosis is very simple. Either there is direct evidence, which means that you can directly find the adult form and the eggs and the larval forms in the feces or in the sputum. And the second is the indirect evidence, which would show that the worm is there, but there are other signs and symptoms or other markers which would be raised. For example, direct evidence is if you macroscopic examination can easily show you the adult worm. The adult worm is so big that if it is passed in the stool or the vomitous, or it is coming out of the nose or mouth, you can easily identify that. Then is microscopic examination of the stool. You can see the typical eggs with a single unsegmented ovum and these rugosities of the albuminous coat, and you can see the clear poles, concentric poles surrounding this ovum. And then if you examine the sputum microscopic examination, you might see these larval forms as well. Indirect evidence is if you examine blood, there is going to be marked eosinophilia. Plus, the serodiagnosis can also be done. We can detect the antigen of this parasite or the antibodies of against this parasite by ELISA or by indirect hemagglutination test. And then the next is thermal allergic reactions, which is known as the scratch test. If you put this Ascaris antigen on the skin and you scratch that area, you will be able to find whether this parasite is there or not. If the antibodies are there, they will come and get attached to the antigen, and there's going to be marked redness and allergic reaction would appear. Imaging also helps us in identification. X-rays, if you look at this X-ray, the worms can be detected in the small intestine. Similarly, we can also perform ultrasound examination to detect the parasite in the hepatobiliary or pancreatic ducts. So with this we are done with the Ascaris, and if you just summarize what we have done, I've told you that this is the largest intestinal parasite. We have discussed the morphology of the egg, which is something very important. And then I told you that there are 5 stages of the life cycle, and all of you should be familiar with these 5 stages, starting from passage of the eggs in the feces, development in the soil, then it entry into the intestine, and then further development in the lungs, and from the lungs re-entry into the intestine, and sexual maturation. Complications I've discussed in detail. These are very important. You get a question on complications, and the most important are the mechanical obstruction, which is very commonly associated with this parasite, or they could be together with mechanical obstruction, it could pass through the intestinal mucosa and can lead to peritonitis. It's an ectopic worm, so it could be seen anywhere in the body, and it can go and obstruct the intrahepatic and extrahepatic ducts or the pancreatic ducts and can produce its effect. Lab diagnosis, direct and indirect method, both are used. By direct method, you are going to directly identify the adult worm, or the microscopically look for the eggs or the larval form, and indirectly you're going to perform blood examination or other serological examinations or tests are done for detection of or identification of the antigens or antibodies which are produced against this antigen, against this parasite. So coming to your assignment, post your answers on the WhatsApp within 24 hours of this lecture, and I'll mark your attendance only if it is there within 24 hours and it is handwritten. I've given you a few MCQs, and there is one SCQ associated with it. The largest intestinal nematode is which one? Now this MCQ is from the life cycle, so if you exactly know what the life cycle is, you would be able to give the correct sequence of the stages in the life cycle of Ascaris lumbricoides. Which nematode can cause pneumonitis with eosinophilic exudate in the lungs? All right. Coming to the SEQ, diagrammatically explain the life cycle of the largest intestinal nematode responsible for mechanical obstruction of the intestine, together with its clinical manifestations and lab diagnosis. Now, 50% of your questions are scenario based and 50% could be direct questions. So, this is a direct SEQ where the examiner is asking about the life cycle, the clinical manifestations, and the lab diagnosis. So, with this, I'm going to end here. And in my next lecture, I would be moving on to ankylostoma duodenale. Thank you.